Hello, and welcome to another edition of Uconomy. I'm Thomas Fox.
And I'm Nunzio Bruno.
And today we're talking about the good overdraft fees at the banks, the fees that are
Oh,
good
wow.
friends.
I thought you were
going to
say the good, the bad, and the ugly.
No. Although they're probably good, bad, and ugly altogether, the fees that we get. A lot of folks get charged and whatnot. So today we're talking a little bit about banking fees and, kind of where they're going. Now, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of legislation about, we have to protect consumers and things like that. I'm a big fan of protecting consumers. What I'm not a fan of is the unintended consequences that come afterward, which is where we had with the Card Act, and everybody was like, we got to take care of these credit card fees, and so we did it. We were straight, it was awesome. And then all of a sudden we started losing free checking accounts because the banks go, well, great, we're going to lose all this money over here, but I'm not going to take a hit. What do we do?
The legislation about debit cards,
fees.
Using your debit card, either a per swipe charge or a monthly maintenance fee for using a debit card that got slapped down.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, there are other issues with the debit card fees as well, but these are challenges. Again, consumer protection is very important. However, when we rush to these kind of protections is where we run into an issue. And the overdraft protection rules that came out by the Fed were meant to really just to help us. Because listen, not for nothing. It was happening, what would they call it? They called it I think it was something ridiculous like the coffee rule or something like that. Because what would happen is, if you get, even if you're over $1 on your checking account, let's say you use your debit card and you go to get that coffee and you're over by $1, next thing you know, you get a $35 fee on top of it. So that cup of coffee, it's called $35 cup of coffee is what it was.
Yep. So
basically you're getting charged $35 for a cup of coffee. And that's ridiculous. I mean, anybody can, and it happens, unfortunately. And it can happen like several times a day, and it still kind of can.
And it's every time you're nailed $35 per charge. So that could be a very expensive afternoon coffee jaunt.
Absolutely, which is why this legislation came into play to say, hey, listen, we got to do something to help these people out.
Yep.
But what kind of happened was it didn't really work out that way. The fees right now on average, and when I said $35, but it's pretty much an average anywhere between $25 to $35. I'd say the national.
I've seen them as high as $45 in some places, just for overdraft.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not even late fees.
So, just saying, the overdraft fees I've seen they range anywhere like $25 to $35, and it could be as high as $40 as I'm hearing right here. And obviously, that's put together to protect you is the way the bank positions that. Because, hey, listen, you overdrafted your account, you don't have enough money in it, but we're going to be good enough to pay for you. Don't you worry about it. We got your back. Well, we're also going to charge you $35. So what some of the rules put into play is that now that instead of that, and that was a blanket thing, so basically anybody would have that attached to their checking account or your savings account. Now when these rules came into play in 2010, they changed that, where now you and I would have to opt into that. And even with all that, it's not really doing what they intended it to do. And if you want to talk a little bit about the fees, the big business that it kind of generates.
Oh, big business. See, this is an interesting topic because then you're kind of straddling a couple of ethical angles. I mean, the first is obviously those banks want to do the right. They're trying to do the right thing for consumers, right?
Absolutely. So here you go, Mr. Consumer. It's take $35 from you. That's great.
So
good friends over there.
Right. The idea is that we're all responsible for our own actions. So financial literacy is obviously the first way to combat that.
Absolutely.
But on top of that, so they provide you this little bit of wiggle room and charge you. What happens though sometimes is when they started to change the way banks started prioritizing their debits and credits, you might satisfy that payment, but as part of their new quote-unquote business model, you might still, based on how the transactions clear in an account, be hammered with even more fees on top of that, just that overdraft fee.
Yeah, I mean, and when overdrafts, at their peak, in 2002, overdrafts generated $23 billion in revenue. Now, in 2009, right before everything went into play with these new regulations, the fees, it was an all-time high of $37.1 billion.
Right.
So here we are, and so now these fees they've gone into play. I mean, these rules have gone into place. Now we're 2011. In 2011, banks generated $31.6 billion in fees. Now, this is after the new rules that were supposed to bring down the onerous charges on overdraft. So, end of the day, $6 billion off. You know what I'm saying? So the banks lost a little bit of money. So, that just asks a logical question, is just how much of an impact did the Federal Reserve's intervention have? And it's really not much. And what really kind of caught me off guard was that 9% of checking accounts generated 84% of these fees. 84%. So not even 10% of their overall performing base.
Well, that's the thing. They want you to keep spending, and they'll keep taking care of you when you spend.
Of course they want you to keep spending, but
don't worry. There's not enough money. We'll cover it.
Well, I think what really, and doing some of the research for this, what I found out, what really kind of threw people off was, now the banks make you have to opt into this. So now they had to create language for you to opt into it. And this is now a major part of contention with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Because what many feel that the banks have done is that they misrepresented what happened if you didn't opt into the fee.
Right.
Essentially, if you don't opt into overdraft fees, all that happens is if you go to use your card, the transaction at that point of time is going to be basically dismissed. They're not going to let the transaction go through.
Right. It's basically a
It's
stop
going to be
loss.
declined.
Right.
Yeah. They're going to say, all right, listen, I want to go buy this $2 cup of coffee. I got 80 cents in my bank account. I swipe it. It goes. You can't.
Yep.
You can't do it. You ain't got no money.
A lot of gas stations are doing that now, even just with regular debit card transactions. What they'll do is they'll ping the account. I forget. I think the range is about $75 is what they ping it for. So to make sure that you have enough to cover whatever your gas is, and you might actually get a decline if you have a debit account, if you're using it as a debit card at the pump.
And just to clarify, this is a practice that's more common in when you're purchasing a rental, or if you're getting a hotel room. Typically what they'll do, and why they always ask for a credit card, is that if there's any damage in the room, they want a certain amount of your card blocked off, be it $200 or whatever it may be. So if you check out and it looked like Motley Crue stayed in your apartment or in the hotel last night, they at least can take that money out of there.
Right.
The gas stations do it because they don't know how much you're going to fill up. Right. So you could just pull up, and they don't know I got a Toyota Yaris or if I got a Hummer. You know what I mean? So they when they say, okay, we'll let you fill up, but they ping to make sure you have a certain amount. Unfortunately, block that amount off for a couple of days. So that may be an issue, and you should always look at this. And if you're using your debit card, especially at a gas station, you should check your bank account to see how quick those funds become available, because then you're $75 down. That's kind of cordoned off, so you want to pay attention to that. But
and in the meantime, the bank is there to take advantage of that. So if you're doing mental math, which you should never do.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said the banks were there to help us with this stuff. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh. Okay.
Right.
I digress.
Right. Helpy helpers.
Helpy helpers. So right now, that's you. They feel that they've been somewhat disingenuous because what some feel, there was Pew Charitable Trust and the Center for Responsible Lending, and they held these focus groups, and they really asked people. They said, all right, when going into these overdraft fees and things like that, how do you feel that it was positioned towards you? And some people said, wow, I thought that me choosing the protection, because that's the way it's
right.
protection. Well, some people thought if they chose the protection, that they wouldn't receive any overdraft fees whatsoever. So their thought, by signing up for overdraft protection, instead of saying, if I go underneath, I'm going to get charged this money, they just thought, I wouldn't get charged any money, and they'll take care of it. And some people altogether felt that the messaging represented that if they didn't sign up for it, they couldn't use their debit cards. Mm-hmm. So now there's a bunch of confusion, and I'll be honest with you, I read one or two of the overdraft fees, the kind of language. It's not deceptive. It's not. I'll put it this way. I watched The Secret of the Credit Card, The Secret History of Credit Cards, and it was Elizabeth Warren was in it, and it was a couple of years back.
She's a brilliant lady.
And she had this whole hot mess of papers. This is a credit card application. She goes, you know what? I write laws for the United States. Let me tell you something. I don't understand this. You know what I mean? So I will say this. I don't find that the language itself was intentionally deceptive, although it's written in legalese. And if you don't have an attorney sitting there with you, it can get confusing.
No,
you know what I mean?
One of my favorites is I've seen overdraft protection programs where they charge, it's basically like insurance. So you pay a monthly kind of premium. So it's $5 or $10 a month for overdraft protection. And if you do overdraft, then it's a reduced fee per transaction.
Yeah.
But even still, you might never use that service and you're still paying a subscription for it. So,
but my issue with that, and that comes back to the point of financial literacy. If you
Right.
can make an informed financial decision, if you sit there and you go through all your math and you go, hey, you know what? They're going to charge me $5 a month for this. And you go through everything and you look at and you go, you know what? For me, that's worthwhile. Then by all means get it.
Right.
But if you're just sitting there and punting and saying, well, I'll just get it anyway, just for whatever, don't do that. And that's for any financial decision, And I told the story before of being on an airplane and people said, hey, I'll give you 50,000 free miles today if you sign up for this credit card. And hands shot up and down the aisle. Everybody filled out the application, handed it right back in. No one read the terms and conditions. No one even bothered to see if the penalty rate was like 27.9% or anything like that.
And they skyrocket too.
Yeah, so you have to pay attention to these things. And by all means, ask questions. If you don't understand something, it's a consumer relationship. If you don't understand something, the terms and conditions of any contract that you're entering, call the company and ask questions. If they can't answer your questions, do business with somebody else.
Yeah.
There's plenty of banks and credit unions that are willing to do business with you, with not this array of onerous fees. So, but you got to shop around. You got to know the language, and you have to be, you basically have to make these decisions based on fact.
And you'll never, the funny thing is, as terrible as these fee structures are, and like you said, how as onerous as this process is, banks won't stop offering services like this because, again, that 9% created 84% of their revenue. That's their money. This is where their business is made. It's not in top-end, bank-to-bank transactions. It's on the everyday consumer, and they are gunning for you to not pay attention to your statements and your accounts so that you can be responsible for those.
Let's hope they're not gunning for us. Although,
a couple of documentaries would
I'm
say
just saying.
the
I'm just
opposite.
saying.
Elizabeth Warren would tell you the opposite.
I know Elizabeth Warren would tell us the opposite. However, we always must remember, and this is, again, when we could have a rally cry to go out there and let's have the government change this, but that's not
Right.
going to help us tomorrow.
Right.
If enough of us begin to understand what's going on with the banking institutions and the kind of language that they use and things like that, then the marketplace decides. If enough people, hey, Bank of America is a great example. Months ago with MoveOn.org when they were talking about this $5 fee
Yep.
for debit cards, and there was this huge public outcry.
Yeah.
And you know what
People
happened?
left in droves.
They stepped away from that fee. The market spoke.
Yep.
It wasn't legislators. It wasn't anything.
And
It
at the
was
same
people.
time, too, taking some responsibility for ourselves, the rate at which we can, get our information via, mobile app or email updates. Again, being part of that whole financial literacy bubble, we want to make sure that, you are taking responsibility for your own financial actions, that you're giving yourself the opportunity to constantly be inundated with your own information, just so that you can stay on top of your financial game, essentially, and constantly, hopefully, strive to make good financial decisions.
No, indeed, and that's that comes through education, and that comes from asking for help. Nunzio has a blog, financiallydigital.com. A lot of great information on there about personal finance. Bankrate.com, another great place that you can go to for financial education. And in the end, if you need any kind of help and you want to reach out and just ask questions, you can call a nonprofit credit counseling agency like Cambridge Credit Counseling, or there's many other ones throughout the country. Call, ask a question. We're running short on time, but what I did want to say is in the end is probably one of the best things you can do is to relook at your relationship with your bank and the overdraft protection. A couple of things you can do to really offset this: balance your checkbook. I don't know anybody that does anymore, and it's really simple.
Yeah.
Read everything that comes from the bank, and if you don't understand it, don't do it. And finally, you may not want to be opted into anything like this, so call your bank and opt out. As long as you think that it's okay for you to walk away from the overdraft protection, and you can balance your budget, balance your checkbook, and make sure you have the cash on hand, you should be fine.
I have one quick thing to add to that. Just automate. If you can create an overdraft protection for yourself, automatic transfers from a checking to a savings account that are also linked the other way. You kind of cut out the middleman yourself, and when it's your own money on the line in that overdraft protection scenario, it might help you to be a little more responsible.
Indeed, yeah. You link up your savings account to your checking account. If it dips underneath at all, sweep some money out of your savings account, and you're all set. Well, listen, thanks a lot for tuning in today to Uconomy. Please find us on Facebook. Are we on Google Plus yet? G Plus?
Yeah, I think so.
For the three of you that actually log into Google Plus, you can find us there.
I still use it.
And Twitter. Find us
at
on
the
Twitter.
Economy Show.
Uconomy Show.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much. We'll see you next time on Uconomy.